What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor. I'm powerless over life, but not my reaction to life. I created this YouTube channel to share my experience, strength, and hope, to share what I've been through, and to share the tools and coping mechanisms that I've had to develop to help me get out of my old lifestyle. I recently created a short about what I've had to deal with the past 7 months since I've been having to go back and forth to all these different specialists. This is the long version of that video to help anybody develop a more thorough understanding of why I have been struggling and what steps I have taken to face those struggles and to overcome those struggles and to not let these struggles break me. You know, I've been involved in 12-step programs for well over 2 years. You know, I started off in Alcoholics Anonymous. A little time after that, I found Adult Children's of Alcoholics and Dysfunctions, which focuses on the family dysfunction. And then I found Emotions Anonymous. There are over 50 to 100 12-step programs available out there that people will go their whole life without knowing. You know, this information just isn't like advertised or whatever. It's like you have to know someone that knows something about it to figure out that these 12-step programs exist. And so about 7 months ago, my health completely declined. I was having serious like heart palpitations, shortness of breath. Like I was struggling to breathe bad. Like I could barely talk. I mean, just laying there, sitting there, it was very intense and very scary. I felt dizzy, like intoxicated in my head, like I was off balance. My bones were in pain. Like it was intense. Okay. And so the first primary care doctor I went to, dismissed my symptoms. He told me it was anxiety. He told me I was having a panic attack. Okay. I wasn't at a place in my recovery where I am now where I felt confident enough to speak up for myself, because when I'm feeling unseen, unheard, or misunderstood, it feels like a physical bomb explodes through my entire body. And with growing up in a household where the only two emotions that were expressed was anger and violence and happiness, I wasn't taught how to communicate when I have these intensified emotions, because the emotions are so intense. I get like 1,000 thoughts in my head and I go into flight or fight response. And back in the day, my main response was fight, right? Now I shut down. It's flight, because I know that if I don't run, if I don't shut down, that I am going to say something that I regret. And that's just where I am in my recovery. So in the beginning of going to these doctor's appointments, I would just not advocate for myself. I would not stand up for myself. I didn't know how. I was not taught how. And this is why several different doctors treated me and tried to blame my physical symptoms on my mental health. Many years ago, I was seeing a psychiatrist. And I went to this psychiatrist. She ended up having me on 7 different types of medications. When I first started seeing her, it wasn't that many, and it just kept adding on top of adding. Now, at this time, I was taking psych meds. I was not working on myself. I was not involved in 12-step programs, okay? I was just taking meds and just going with the flow of life. I became very depressed to where I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually sick. I was emotionally and spiritually blocked from myself. I was completely numbed out, okay? And with years of being depressed and sleeping all day, every day, and to be as broken as I was without having 12-step programs, a support system, tools, coping mechanisms. You know, when I quit drinking, I turned to sleep as my main coping mechanism, because I didn't know how to cope with reality, because reality was too painful. So I went to this psychiatrist and I told her, I am suicidal. I am physically not feeling well. I was having to take a scooter in Walmart because my body was physically breaking down because of all the medicine I was on. It was that serious. It was life or death for me. So I had to take matters into my own hands. And I decided to come off my psych meds, because that's what I needed to do to make myself better. I didn't say, I'm going to come off psych meds. I'm against psych meds. I'll never get on psych meds again. What I told myself is, I need to come off all these medications so I can see what symptoms I'm really having, because I was on so many. I was still depressed on depression medicine. I was still anxious and having panic attacks on benzos. Like, I was broken. I was miserable. And I wanted an easy, fast fix. And that's what I searched for in psychiatric medications for over 10 years, trying to get that quick fix, the way alcohol gave me that quick fix, you know? And so the doctors see that in the computer, that I took matters in my own hand, and I came off of 7 high milligram psych meds. So they judge me on that because I'm not being compliant, right? So they also look at the fact that I'm an ex-alcoholic, an addict. So that's on my record. And they look at the fact that all the misdiagnoses that I have been misdiagnosed with because I had zero healing. I've been diagnosed with BPD, bipolar, anxiety, major depressive disorder, PTSD, and I was just getting sober for the first time. I had zero healing. So anybody with the type of life that I chose to live would, of course, have symptoms of all these different mental health disorders, okay? And so I have been discriminated based on my past history, and that is the God's honest truth. So it would really be disencouraging. I went to this primary care doctor many times, and at each visit, he tried to convince me that my physical symptoms were centered in my mind, and he tried to prescribe a psych med. Every visit, I asked for antibiotics. I asked him, are you sure this isn't an infection? Because my blood work was abnormal. My blood work was showing that there was some type of infection in my body. I was having sepsis symptoms. Like I said, I was having serious heart palpitations, and I'm not talking about anxiety heart palpitations. Like, my heart was struggling to breathe. Like I said, feeling intoxicated, couldn't breathe. I could barely walk. I had to force myself to get up out of bed and take action every day. And when I first got sick, I'm grateful that I had been in 12-step programs long enough, and I had experienced part of the promises come true, and I had enough people reach out to me during this time, because I stepped halfway back from my program. I stopped praying and meditating in the morning. The little things that I was used to doing, I stopped doing because I physically couldn't, right? That's what my excuse was. I physically can't do this because I could barely walk. I could barely talk. I was extremely sick. I felt like I was dying. So I started sleeping all day because I was scared. Like, all of a sudden I'm feeling like this. Like, I'm so scared. Nobody's listening to me. Nobody's helping me. Nobody's seeing me, hearing me, or understanding me. I'm being dismissed. I'm being gaslighted. Like, all these intensified emotions, which are all based on fear, right? And so I started sleeping a lot more and sleeping a lot more. And a week went by. Then a week and a half went by. And then I finally realized, Taylor, you are going to be sick regardless if you lay in bed or if you get up and take action. You're still going to be sick. So would I rather lay in bed and sit in my misery, sit in my fear, and make myself even more miserable than I already am, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Or do I get up and do what I know I need to do to put my program first? And that is when I developed my recovery routine. And I did that recovery routine no matter how I felt physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Like, that's what I knew I had to do to maintain my emotional sobriety, my mental health, and to maintain my spiritual connection. That's what I knew I had to do, because for me, it's very dangerous if I step back from my recovery schedule. It's very dangerous if I start isolating. There are days today, I force myself sometimes on my recovery schedule. I'll reach out to at least 2 people every day that are involved in 12-step programs, because I know what happens when I say, oh, Oh, I can skip this call this one time. Oh, I can just take a nap this time of the day. And then tomorrow I say the same thing. Oh, I can just lay down for a few. I deserve it. I'm physically sick. I can just sleep because I'm physically sick. And then before you know it, Taylor's back into a major depressive, disorder state, and I'm depressed again. So I put my program first during the time that I was sick, okay? And like I said, I'm getting sidetracked because the little details matter. I'm going to try to make this less than 20 minutes. So I went to this doctor 5 times, and I kept trying, being rejected every time, feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood. I would type out my symptoms, type out my abnormal blood work. I feel like maybe I could have communicated. I could have stood up for myself a little bit more. And it's because I wasn't taught how to communicate like in a healthy, nice way when I'm feeling unheard, unseen, misunderstood. So I would prevent myself from saying like speaking from my heart, because it's hard for me to be vulnerable with a doctor that is making judgments based on my past. It's hard to be vulnerable and feel safe enough to open up to someone who's not hearing me, seeing me, or understanding me, right? I had to be in tears and begging him to refer me to someone who can help me. And like I said, at each visit, my blood work was showing I had an infection. And he straight up told me no. I asked for antibiotics at each visit. He declined them. Okay, during around this time, I went to the emergency room 3 times within a 2-month period. My blood work was abnormal. Like I said, it was showing some type of infection. They did nothing to help me. When I told the hospital like my physical symptoms, right, and how I was feeling in my head, because it's hard for me to put physical feelings with vocabulary words, right? And I would explain to them, I feel intoxicated. That's how I feel, like dizzy, headaches, off balance, my vision's off. And the doctor was like, well, we're going to have to give you an alcohol test to see if you've been drinking. And so I get, because of my history, I get it. But it's like, I'm reaching out for help and you're still using my past against me. They did nothing to help me. And it wasn't until I went to the dentist, they told me I had an infection in my mouth. And I had zero pain, right? Zero pain. Didn't even know I had an infection in my mouth. I finally got antibiotics. And guess what? All those physical symptoms stopped. So I was basically sepsis for several months. Now, within the past 7 months, I have been to 5 different specialists. Okay. 2 of them tried to dismiss. I went to GI because, of course, I'm going to keep searching for answers, because although those physical symptoms stop, I am having other symptoms that are just my baseline, right? And so I'm still looking for answers and I'm still searching. And my point is that I haven't given up. And I will not give up. I will not let their perception of me, their judgments, and their assumptions prevent me from finding answers out for what is going on with me, because I know that I am more mentally and emotionally and spiritually stable for the past 2 years that I have ever been my entire life. I know that I am sick, and I will not let anybody convince me otherwise. Seriously. I have to be my own advocate. If I wouldn't have put in all this research that I have done, like all my symptoms, and just research, what testing do I need to get and all types of stuff, I have to do that because every doctor's appointment I went to, they weren't offering any testing, okay? Every testing that I got is because I did the research and I specifically asked for that testing. And when I went to my first GI appointment, she acted like she was concerned, and she acted like she had empathy, right? She took 30 minutes talking to me, to explaining all my symptoms. And guess what she kept circling back around? She kept circling back around my mental health history. And it's very discouraging, and it can be very hard. It made me want to give up so many times. What's the fucking point? I'm just getting rejected. I'm not being seen. I'm not being heard. I have never felt so misunderstood and alone my entire life, even though I had a circle of support, because I would reach out to people, and even people in my circle would try to tell me it was PTSD or that I was having anxiety. Like, people would literally dismiss me, and it was painful. And it changed my perspective towards people when I got sick and how they reacted to me. And so that I had to deal with on another level. That's a separate issue. But I had to turn to myself for support, for emotional support. And I did that by talking out loud to myself, motivating myself, encouraging myself, doing things that make me feel good, meditating and self-reflecting a lot, working on my communication skills, working on inner work. How can I improve? Like, every doctor appointment I went to, I had to prepare really hard for those doctor's appointments. I have to, because of the type of life I've lived. Like, I had to put in the work. Right? I had to use my tools. When I would go to these doctor's appointments, I would spend that time in the car with me and the universe, I call it. Whatever power is greater than ourselves that is out there. Nobody knows who, what, where, how, why, or what it is. It just is. I would spend that time, that quiet time, to talk out loud to myself and to it, to motivate myself, to remind myself that I am all I have. Okay? If I turn against myself, I have nothing. I will turn back to being broken. And I refuse to be as broken as I was before I got involved in 12-step programs 2 years ago. And like I was saying, GI denied my testing. They tried to blame the natural medicine that I'm taking that is keeping me alive. Okay? I got natural medicine from overseas that actually healed my kidneys in 2020. But when I tell them that, they look at me like I'm crazy, because they don't practice natural medicine here in America. They want to push a pill. They want to treat this symptom. They want to treat that symptom. And when I tell them I'm not here to treat the symptoms, I'm here to finding out the root cause, they start treating me different. They don't like that, I've tried to quit this medicine. I can't tell you how many times the past 7 months. And within a week and a half of me quitting the natural medicine, my symptoms are intensified. This medicine that I have treats inflammation. They use it to treat cancer and autoimmune overseas. So I would probably be dead without this medicine, because it is keeping me alive. And it's so hard to know that this is helping me, but these doctors aren't listening to me, right? So they denied me testing the first time. So guess what I did? I made another appointment, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care how you feel, what you think about me. This is my health. What you say and what you think don't fucking matter to me, because I'm going to get answers. I'm going to get the answers that I'm looking for. So I created all my symptoms, all the symptoms I had on one document. On the second document, I created all the tests and procedures that I have already had, the things that have been cleared out. And on the third document, I put all my abnormal blood work. And they did not deny me testing. They granted me a colonoscopy. So my point of this, and my point of sharing this with whoever's willing to listen, is that I can't give up, because I know my body better than anybody else. And I know that I will eventually get answers. And I have to drop my expectations, because I would get my hopes up at every appointment. Like, maybe I'll find out this time. Maybe this blood work will show something. Maybe my body will tell on itself. And I can't have expectations. And that is why I lean towards my higher power, and I lean towards myself through meditation and self-reflection. And I have to stay grounded with myself. I have to maintain my recovery schedule no matter what, because when I get off that recovery schedule, I start getting irritable discontent. And I finally built up the courage to contact a lawyer. I did. And the first lawyer was like, oh, we hear too many similar cases about yours. We can't take your case. I'm like, okay, thank you so much. The second lawyer, the receptionist, or whatever the lady's called that calls to get the data and the information of what's going on, she called me. She spent over 30 minutes with me on the phone, and me opening up to her and telling her everything that's happened. And because I fear, it's not that I fear authority figures. I just get really uncomfortable around people that have degrees and things like that, those types of people, because I feel like they can communicate a lot better than I can. And when I'm trying to explain things, like, I can't explain things in order. And so I want to get a timeline of, like, data. So when they ask me a question, I can just, like, give them a specific, definite answer, because my brain doesn't remember things like the standard person's brain does. My brain is very unique and is wired very uniquely. And so I have to do a lot more inner work than the standard person does. And so they have called me every single day trying to get a hold of me since Thursday, and that shows me that I'm pretty sure I have a case. And it's not about the case, it's about the emotional distress, the emotional pain that I've had to go through, the physically suffering because I was denied antibiotics. If I would have just gotten antibiotics at that first visit, I wouldn't have had to suffer for 3 months, right? And so my point is that I have to be my own advocate, because nobody's going to show up for me the way I can show up for myself. I know what I need. I know what I want. I know what I'm capable of. And if I'm always telling myself, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm too scared, I'm too that, blah, 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 then guess what? Nothing's going to happen. But when I started telling myself, I can overcome this, I can do this, I can learn that, I can learn how to communicate in a healthy way, I can learn how to regulate my emotions. I will and I can are my 2 favorite words to use, for real. And so if you're struggling with your health and you're continuing to be dismissed, gaslighted, doctors making assumptions because their egos are so big, do your research and keep trying, because I'm telling you, there's one doctor out there that will listen to you. You just have to find that one doctor. So keep fucking moving forward. You got this.